Hi, my name is Georgina Graham. I'm a makeup artist and a product developer. I never really knew that I wanted to be a makeup artist. I think it kind of just fell upon me. From a very early age, I was always fascinated by makeup and beauty rituals. I had a very glamorous mother and grandmother, and I remember watching them get ready and kind of loving the transformation. I grew up being a real film buff, and my particular love was golden age films of Hollywood, and I was always fascinated by how the women looked. And when I was at school, I remember practicing on my friends, and then going to university in Manchester and practicing on my friends to go out and trying different looks. And I lived with two drag queens, Poppy Field and Ginger Roger, who would take me out clubbing in Manchester and Leeds, and we'd dress up and do makeup and play around. And those were the really formative moments in my life around makeup. Then the other side came in, and that was youth culture. And, you know, it wasn't the sort of campy makeup and cinema side. It was kind of 90s influences, and suddenly the naturalistic side of when kind of Kate Moss and grunge and all those things that influenced me came in, where I started to develop an interest in a more naturalistic side. And then, of course, it was makeup through music and being really fascinated by how musicians looked and being obsessed with everyone from Mazzy Star through to Sinead O'Connor, and then Sonic Youth and Courtney Love and all these amazing, strong women that I was so obsessed by and still am. So I went to Manchester University, where I studied history of art and with Hispanic studies. And from the makeup side, I started working at MAC Cosmetics as a Saturday girl in Kendall's, which is the big department store in Manchester. And I kind of met people that I would never have come across, and I loved them dearly. And they were such big influences on me because they were really people that were really heavily into pop culture and just going out. And they were kind of like when you hear a little bit about the old mods and how they'd be like, you know, shop kids at 16 and spending all their money going out. These were the people that I was working with and hanging out with. And I was a student by day, and by night I was a clubber, I suppose. And so I started really playing around with makeup. And then when I left university and I went back to London, which is where I'm from, I carried on working for MAC, and they were really supportive of me. And I have to give a massive shout out to Terry Barber, who's the head of artistry for MAC Cosmetics globally. And he was such a huge influence, and he was the first person that sort of said to me, you've got talent, I think you could do this professionally. And I hadn't really thought about it as a profession. For me, it was just something that I did and loved. And I don't know why, but I think I never thought you could make a living doing something that you love. But that might also be to do with how I was brought up, and we could start talking about feelings right now. So my first break in the industry was I moved back down from Manchester University. I was always indie glam fashion bird, and I went to Portobello Market at that time. It was still super cool, and lots of people were having stalls, and it was a really buzzy moment in London. And I met a photographer called Rebecca Lewis, who I don't know if she's still a photographer, but she was really into Northern Soul, and she sold me a pair of brown snakeskin pumps, which I still have and love. And she and I we clicked, and we wanted to go out dancing, and we hung out, and so much of that time was about socialising with your contemporaries. And a couple of days later, she messaged me and she said, do you want to do a shoot for Shazzy Thomas with The Face, she was the fashion editor at the time of The Face. And I said, yes, I'd love to. And we did a couple of shoots, and one of the shoots that we did was with Alexander McQueen on Exmouth Market in the pie and mash shop that he used to work at, which was an amazing experience. And she really got me into all the style magazines, and we started working together, shooting for The Face, ID. Then we did a shoot for Sleaze Nation magazine, which was on Scrutton Street in East London. And I met the fashion director and the editor, and they invited me to be the beauty director. And then it just snowballed from there. And I was suddenly in and shooting and doing all these amazing shoots, working with, amazing photographers and stylists and set designers. And it was a really creative time. Everything was on a shoestring budget. Everything you had to really be a lateral thinker and think, how am I going to do this? You never had a permit for anything. We were always just running around. One of the first jobs that I was asked to cover was they launched all those 24-hour makeup things. So the shoot I wanted to do was testing a foundation, a lipstick and a mascara that supposedly lasted for 24 hours. So we recreated the Prodigy Smack My Bitch Up video, where we just went out clubbing for the entire night, behaved in a way that I won't say on camera because now I'm a mother with 2 children. And the shoot happened the next morning to see how it had all lasted. And that was what went into the magazine. And it was just such a free guerrilla style time of being creative and having fun. And nobody had iPhones and no one was shooting BTS because that hadn't existed. And it was just super fun. And from that from that shoot, I was then invited I was playing around a little bit with styling at that time as well. And I was invited to style all of Mike Skinner's videos. And I did the first album of The Streets, which was original pirate material. And so I then segued into music, working with Mike Skinner, MIA, and then I went on tour for a very long time with Depeche Mode, and that was great fun. And then I started working with Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. So my career went from fashion and beauty into makeup, and then I went back into beauty and fashion, and I moved to Paris and had a place in Paris and had the best time. And also, I just don't understand when I look at my photos now how I went everywhere in such high Alaya heels, because now I can barely wear a platform. And it was a time where we were trotting all over Paris and shooting, and I was with Purple Magazine and Self-Service. And that was where I honed my craft and really learned about makeup and getting it right. And there's a very set look in Paris at that time in fashion, and this was the whole Vogue France days. At the time it was Vogue Paris, and I worked doing many, many beauty stories for them. And I feel that what the French do better than anyone is doing the same thing and getting it perfect. So they'll make a macaroon, for example, and it'll be exactly the same recipe for 400 years, but they tweak it and get it better and better and better. So for me, that was where, in terms of makeup, I could do a shoot and the red lip would be perfect, or the winged eyeliner would be incredible, the smoky eye. So if London was this creative time where it was all about you can't eat your tear sheets, meaning it doesn't matter about getting paid because it's all about creativity and working for the love of it. Paris was about, whether you were on a commercial job or a editorial, doing it to the very, very best of your ability. And then I worked in the States in New York, and that was about just bringing in the money. That was like the earning days of just really doing the ad jobs. The creative was always really, really dry, and you would just do it with a smile on your face, knowing that you were going to get booked on a nice big juicy ad job. And then I came back to London when I was pregnant with my twins and settled down, and have been here working ever since. And that was when I moved into product development. My role as a makeup artist has evolved over the last decade in that I transitioned from being just a makeup artist and creative director for magazines to becoming a product developer. So it started off with me being invited by various brands to work as the global makeup artist. So it started with very simple things like just working on colour palettes. And then as I worked more with the brands or the companies or the individuals, I started to be invited to go to the factories, mostly in Italy and some in the States, where I would sit down and work with a cosmetic scientist on creating new products. And I feel that my area of expertise has been around sustainability, and then also around innovation. I'm obsessed with products. I'm an absolute product junkie. And I'm fascinated by the new and the good and the great. And I want to create products that are planet positive and people positive. I think the benefits of working across the board through beauty as a makeup artist have been that I've always tried to keep things moving. I've always moved around. I've always tried to be interested in people, and I hope that also makes me interesting to clients or consumers or whoever I'm working with. I think that the industry has changed so dramatically since I started. There's been such a huge seismic shift, and it's been because A, I've worked now for over 20 years. B, I've worked through several recessions, and that affects the industry greatly. I think culture shifts dramatically in terms of what comes in, what goes out. I've been a witness to insane misogyny, and I think that when I had my kids, my babies, my twins, I've got identical twin daughters, I think that I just thought enough is enough, and I want to shift a little bit. And I wanted to work a little bit more with talent because, firstly, I felt the chat was better on set than sitting down with, a gorgeous model who was just on her phone the whole time or crying because she'd broken up with her boyfriend. It was interesting to work with directors and actresses and have meaningful conversations. That was important to me. And that's also to do with growing up. When I started, I was the same age as all the models. We'd go out and get completely fucked up together. And now I'm much more interested in saying to the models, so what's your mum and dad do? And, what do you, it's changed. And that's how it should be. For me, unless I'm working on a really special project, I think fashion is for young people. And I think those style magazines, they don't want someone in their 40s. I think it should be like someone in their late teens and 20s running things and setting the trends. I'm more interested in taking the conversation around my work to be in a place that feels more meaningful to me. And that also, maybe it's the confidence that I have now of being a woman and saying, I won't do that shoot and you can't talk to me like that. And you can't talk to anyone on the set like that. And back in the day, I can't say on camera, but I've got a million stories of the biggest photographers in the world who behaved so badly. But I think there has been a shift and a change in the industry. And I think, I think the Me Too movement shifted that, as did the BLM, Black Lives Matter movement, where suddenly doors were open, not enough doors. It was very performative in a lot of ways, but it has shifted, and I think it's shifted for the better. I don't use AI as any part of my process, and there was this great quote that they asked AI to make a song in the style of Nick Cave, the musician, and when they played it to him or gave him the lyrics that was in the style of Nick Cave and they asked him what he thought, he said that this was a grotesque mockery of what it is to be human. And so until I'm proved otherwise, that's my stance too. How has the industry changed? It's changed so enormously. I think the thing that strikes me the most is that everything is so fast now. You're almost not given time to think or prep. And you used to have the luxury of being given a mood board or a brief, sometimes a few weeks in advance. And I find that that's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And I'm getting a mood board 2 or 3 days before the job. And I might be on another job and it's trying to carve out time so that you can do the best possible work that you can. And I find that in everything. It's whether it's on shoots, editorials, or whether it's on ad jobs, or whether it's for runways. And then I think also, I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer because I still love the industry and I still love what I do and I still love the people that I work with. But I do think that the capturing of BTS, which then interrupts the actual work you're meant to be doing, is bananas. So that's a big change. I think what I like to see as a change is the new youth quake and the new energetic side of fashion and seeing the new trends and how people are interpreting them. That's exciting. It's still exciting to me. I'm still fascinated and obsessed by all things youth culture. And so that's a joy to see. And also to be part of amazing groups. So I'm part of a group called Mentoring Matters, and I wish that had been around when I was starting out. And it's a non-profit program, which is designed to help people in creative industries who might come from backgrounds where they wouldn't have been inspired. And it's mostly for people of colour who haven't had that opportunity to be encouraged to be in the creative world and the arts. So as a mentor for them, that's been a privilege, and to see lots of different programs around inclusivity. And that I think that's what I really like the most. I feel like when I was at Style magazines, we were all about that anyway. At Sleaze Nation, that's what we were all about. But that didn't feel very common. You didn't see that in other magazines. You didn't see a lot of that in the mainstream. So to see, I don't think we see enough of it still. I need to make that clear. But I do think it's every day a step to seeing older models, different shapes, seeing colourful runways. That's what we want to see, and colourful pages with different types of people. That's important. So those are areas that I think are really important. When I started out, I never assisted. I think that I would have been useless because I'm way too chaotic. And I still can't really pack my own kit. I find it really hard. And I am not organised enough to assist somebody, but I wish that maybe if I had assisted and maybe pushed myself a little harder, I could have assisted some of the greats, and that might have fast-tracked my career. But then at the same time, I went in so many different directions with music and a bit of styling here and working in fashion and doing advertising. I think that I took a different route, and everyone's journey is theirs. My survival guide for the industry is A, don't be an asshole. B, be spontaneous. C, be kind. D, always try to have your glass half full and not half empty. My advice to young creatives is, even when people say no, don't lose that inner voice that tells you that you have to do this, that you have to create. I think as an artist, we go through so many different stages of what it is to be as a human, and those ups and downs are huge, and you can't have the ups if you don't have the downs. And there's a flow to the career, and there's a flow to life, and you must keep going, and you must create art. And even in the most horrible times that we live in, whether it's global wars or pandemics or whatever it is, you need to try and find the beauty in yourself and in your art. And it doesn't have to be decorative art. You know, your work can come from a place of anger or from a place of destruction, but as well as from beauty and light and all the wonderful things. But you must keep going and try to seek out people that you can communicate with, communicate your feelings, your thoughts, and try to be productive. And then my other piece of advice is find the side hustle. Find the side hustle so that in the quiet times you can keep going and you're not going to fall into any pits of despair. Try and find something that generates an income while you're trying to work on your art, if your art hasn't generated an income. There's so many ways now that I think when I started, no one gave advice on how to try to secure your future. So I think that's something that you have to go into seriously, and try to just keep going. You know, take every day as it comes.